It was so unexpected.
You had to be there.
Covering Celtic at that time was a brilliant thing. The atmosphere at Parkhead was always great.
You had to be there.
Nobody ever talks about this game. Nobody saw it.
You had to be there.
All right, it is the latest episode of You Had to Be There. It's the slot where we ask people for their favourite individual performances, ones that were so good it reminded you about why you fell in love with sport in the first place. We've done some brilliant ones in the past, and we're delighted to say it's our first opportunity to do some GAA. Paudie Maher is with us this morning. Paudie, how are you getting on?
Good, lads, yourselves?
Yeah, good. This is always difficult when you're asked to make a list of 5 things that you've witnessed personally. You're like, actually, I've seen some good stuff. So how did you narrow it down? What did you go about? How did you pick your best and favourite?
Oh God, George, I actually found it very hard because when I was asked to start, I was like, geez, yeah, that'd be easy enough. You'd be able to pick out a couple of performances that. But then as you went through it, then you'd be like, Gina, what about this one? You know, there was different years. I picked other ones. I was like, oh God. And then I could have picked 5 Tipperary ones then. And then I was like, I better put in one or two from different teams as well. So, yeah, it was harder than I thought it'd be now.
We should start with Lar against Kilkenny in the 2010 final because I don't know if there's ever been a better individual performance in an All-Ireland final. What was the build-up to that like? Did you have a sense he was going to go off that day?
Well, Lar had been on the panel, I suppose, about 9. I think he came on in 2001. So he'd been fair experienced at that stage. And Tip hadn't been going that well up to about 2008 or 9 when Liam Sheedy came back in. So, yeah, but Lar started to find form in 2008 and really, you know, pushed it on in 2009 when I came on the panel then. And I think he was nominated for Hurler of the Year in 2009. So, you know, he was really in form and confidence. And you could just see he's really enjoying, you know, I suppose having a good setup, a good management team around him. And he was really reaping the benefits. So, yeah, no, we got bet in the first round of the championship that year against Cork. We got hammered and just through the back door, and you know he got the winning point in the All-Ireland quarter-final against Galway, and he had a good performance against Waterford. So there was a performance obviously there. It's not a surprise, but Genie, what he done that day was outrageous. Like,
before we get to the game itself, who would end up marking Lar in training? Like, as a defence, when you were up against him, what were you guys thinking you needed to do to try and break even?
Gosh, he's mad. Like he'd really message her ahead in training, and you know, he just used to be very versatile. He used to roam around. He could be at 10, he could be at 11, he could be at 14, 15. He nearly just try and drive you mad more than nearly concentrating on what he's doing himself, you know, that kind of way. But very hard to mark because, you know, he's so big. He's actually 6'3". Like he's so tall. He's so strong, even though he might look that, you know, maybe even wide or whichever way you want to put it, but he's so strong, naturally strong, and then obviously he's so fast, as we all seen over the years. So no matter what way he could come at you anyway. He could run at you, he could catch a high ball over you, he could get out in front of you. He was just so cute, and as the years went on, and as I said to you at the start, when he got more confidence and he started enjoying it a bit more, I think he really shone his performances.
There's a kind of sweet spot here, and it's funny, he's actually the first and second ones that you've picked. We'll get to them in a minute. When you say he's messing with you in training, is he chatting to you as much as anything? Is it like, I'm going to skin you for speed here, like I'm faster than you? Or is it just purely giving you a challenge that you're like, I don't know where this is coming from next?
No, like I suppose I'm the same club as him, so I would have seen a lot of it between club and intercounty. And, you know, we'll just say, for instance, if I was training in a training game at centre back and he knew I'd like to get on the ball and roam around and get on the ball and pick up the breaks, whatever it is. And he'd only concentrate on me and train, then he'd try and put me off. He'd say to the younger lads around me in the forward line with him, he'd say, look, lads, you know what he wants to do, you know, take him to a part of the pitch that he doesn't want to be and all that kind of thing. So he was very cute like that, you know, and I suppose he was kind of ahead of his time in his thinking as a forward, as you see now. This was 10 years ago, like, so, you know, he'd bring you out of your comfort zone. So if he'd say, I'd go in centre forward on park there for a while, and he'd bring me out the field or he'd bring me into the corner, you know, completely out of where I want to be playing, you know, that kind of way. So he just used to kind of mess your head like that. But in fairness, he'd do it in a way too that it'd actually try and make me think, you know, if an opposition player was going to do it to me in a game, what way I'd face it, you know. So that's just the way he was. He was a great character. Like,
maybe this is wrong, but I definitely get the sense that the forwards would have spent a lot of time working with Eamon O'Shea around that time, and that he was the one who was helping them to create the space. And kind of Lar is almost, if Eamon O'Shea was to create in a lab the perfect hurler for him, maybe Lar would be the perfect one, because he can do anything that you want him to do, and he has the skill set and the range of skills that if there's no space, he's going to be able to use his speed to create it. But actually, he still has that size that you need to put somebody who's physically strong on him as well.
Yeah, exactly. Like Eamon O'Shea came in 08 with Liam Sheedy, and you were talking there, he really transformed forward play in Tipperary, and I think he actually kind of transformed it in the country as well. And I think Lara was the forefront of that. He really bought into what Eamon wanted, as in movement, find yourself in different positions, runs off the ball, different things like that. I picked 2010 here as the first one with Lara, but even 2009 final against Kilkenny when they beat us, I remember Eamon actually got Lar to play the first half centre forward, which was out of the blue for everyone kind of. But he knew he could get into space, he could pick up breaks. And I think Lar had about 3 points in the first half, and he was really, really in form. I think it caught Kilkenny by surprise as well. So look, that was just the versatility he had and the buy-in he had to what Eamon wanted in the team, and especially in the forward line.
What else was there from Eamon O'Shea, with regards to that forward play? Lara was obviously the most important part of it, but I hadn't realised that the level of innovation that he brought to forwards.
Yeah, I suppose when you want to, I would be the best person to speak about that, because he would have talked to the forwards a lot individually and as a group, as a forward line. But even over the years, there, he was just, it was all about movement with Eamon, and find yourself into good positions, and there was no such thing as you had to be in a certain position as a different time, the way it used to be 15, 20 years ago. He really wanted movement, and you could even see that from the first goal Larry got in the 2010 final. I think he was 1-on-1 inside, and there was no one inside from about 40 yards, just the way the lads found themselves in positions, So he just really kind of wanted the players to express themselves and be open-minded and play that bit of freedom in the forward line, that I suppose play what you see in front of you. You don't have to be nailed in the corner forward or wing forward or centre forward, that kind of way. So, and he had different ideas then as well. As I said to you there, he put Larry centre forward the first half in the final in 2009. I remember he played Noel McGrath centre forward in 2010 against Brick Walsh, because they knew Brick was going to sit. And he just knew the way Noel could play the game, that he'd Noel nearly playing out midfield, and we were just picking off Noel passes. And I think Noel scored about 6 points. So he just had these ideas, and that's a lot of this movement and freedom in the forward line that helped them really express themselves, especially the kind of forwards we had at the time.
Well, it must have been very difficult to defend against week in, week out in training. Generally, you're like, oh, Jesus, where's this coming from now?
Yeah, exactly. I've often been asked that question. You could be faced. You could be full forward, you could be full back 1 week, you mark Eoin Kelly, you might mark Lara Corbett the following week. You could be out centre back, you mark Noel McGrath, or you could mark, John O'Brien. It was just endless, and as the years went on, you'd Shane McCallan, obviously you'd bubble. So no matter what day of training, you were getting a different challenge. And I always said that it probably actually stood to us as backs, because we weren't going to face much better outside of our own training ground.
The 2010 All-Ireland final then, obviously, it's a history match where, literally the greatness of the Kilkenny team being as good as the Kerry footballers, they can be the greatest team of all time in GA up to that point. Did that factor into any of your thinking? Were you aware of that in the build-up? Because it was the most hyped hurling match that I can remember.
Yeah, I suppose there was a lot of talk at the time, and then you throw in that we played each other in the 2009 final as well, and Kilkenny going for 5 in a row, and then with the injuries they had leading into the game with Henry Shefflin and John Tennyson, the walking with the cruciates, so there was a fair big build-up. But in fairness, was there any more on the Kilkenny side? It was fairly quiet our side of things in Tipperary. As I said, our training sessions leading into that final, they were very quiet. There wasn't many at them. We had the official open night like every team would do before Ireland. But other than that, and it wasn't as if we had closed doors or anything. It was just, we had our couple of people trickling in, but there was nothing, you wouldn't take any notice of it, so you get on about your business. So, but yeah, I suppose the whole occasion, the build up to it, as you spoke about there, they're going for 5 in a row. And then that's why I kind of trained Larry's performance as number one as well here, because to have that performance in a final that was so built up and there was so much on the line, and then for him to do that and make history, that was probably one of the reasons why it was such a good performance.
What's your own memory of the game and how it kind of ebbs and flows? Because although Shefflin goes off, it didn't really feel like it was going to be a significant impact on whether or not. That doesn't make any sense either, because he's obviously Henry Shefflin. But you still felt like this was nip and tuck, really, until Lar Corbett scores the goals.
Yeah, and Henry Shefflin went off after, I don't know how into time it was there. It was half for the first half, rare enough anyway. And but Kilkenny were going for 5 All-Irelands in a row. They had such a good, I've said it before, that you take Henry Shefflin out, you have Owen Larkin, Owen Larkin, Richie Power, Richie Hogan, TJ Reid, Eddie Brennan, Aidan Fogarty, and that's only having them few there. You could have Michael Fennelly playing forwards for a bit as well. You Colin Fennelly, you had so many players there that to pick from, so no matter what, it was kind of like what we spoke about there with tip training sessions with the forwards. We were marking that no matter who came on you in playing in Kilkenny, you were getting a different challenge and you knew what you were expecting. They were all working very hard. They all fought for the team and they're all brilliant to hurl. So, I know Henry Shefflin went off early enough, and but even I don't even think Kilkenny lads used that as an excuse throughout the years. I think they said that Tip were very better the team, but no matter what Kilkenny forward you're marking, they bring a different challenge. It was nip and tuck until Larry got that goal. It was nip and tuck until the second half, really, until he got the second goal, I think it was. So, it was an outstanding performance, to be fair, and really stood out.
A hat-trick in an All-Ireland final, obviously, it's that can't really be bettered. And then in the Munster final in 2011, which is next on your list, there's another Lar Corbett masterclass. Tipperary 7-19, Waterford 19 points. This is Davy Fitz's Waterford team, I think, is it?
Yeah, Davy Fitz was manager. They won the Munster final in 2010. I think it was Davies last year as Waterford manager, actually, and it was played below in the old Park of Kiev. And I think we changed our management. Declan Ryan had come in, Liam Sheedy left after the 2010 final, so we knew management. But we got back to the Munster final in Cork, and it would only been a lot of our second Munster final playing, so it was still a big, massive occasion for us. And I think Waterford played an inexperienced full-back that day, where they started him in there, Jerome Maher, I think his name was, and of course, as Larry done, he sniffed, he knew what was in experience in there, and he made his way in there, and 4-4 kind of explains itself really in the Munster final. It was just, we won handily enough in the end, but it was just one of them games, and it was like a lot of my top 5 performances I picked for you there. The reason I picked them was because you were leaving the game, you were going, wow, I just thought that was unbelievable. Even if I was playing or watching, that kind of way. So that day in 2011 was one of them days where even though I was playing, I kind of left going, Jesus, what is Larry after doing there? 4-4.
4-4. It's like kind of an under 10s game, but it's a Munster final against the reigning Munster champions.
Have you seen in modern hurling somebody on as rich a vein of form as Lar Corbett in late 2010, early 2011?
Well, there's probably different performances, if that makes, obviously Tony Kelly, I could have picked Tony Kelly in these as well, but I probably wouldn't have seen him live, do you know, that kind of way, to be on television or whatever. But Tony Kelly has given some outrageous performances in the last few years, and he's been racking up 14, 15, 16 points. Now, I know he was hitting frees as well, and he's been getting 8, 9, 10 points from play. But as regards goals and goal scoring form and being so consistent, it takes a lot to top what Larry has done. And Shamie Cannon has given a couple of performances over the years where he's got a few goals. Broad Hegarty, Shamie Flanagan, a few Limerick lads have got came out games with a lot of points scored, we'll say. But as regards goal scoring, I don't think anyone has been in such a richer game of form as Larry was in 2009, 10, 11.
I know it wasn't very difficult to include somebody from Kilkenny on your list, but you had to. We've got Henry Shefflin in. He's next against Galway in the 2012 final. This is a drawing game. Kilkenny 19 points, Galway 2-13 from September 2012. This is the All-Ireland final, the first game. What about Shefflin's performance that day was special?
I was at that game myself. My brother was playing. Rowan was playing the minor All-Ireland beforehand. So, Galway were in control that day. From what I remember, they were up 4-5 at half time, and you couldn't, Kilkenny weren't firing at all. And like, to me, this performance, the reason I picked this performance was that day, I think Henry Sheffield finished up at hurler of the year that year. And he was coming to the back end of his career, like, to be fair. But that day, the performance in the second half from him, they moved him out centre forward, I think, and he really just grabbed the game by the scruff of the neck. When Kilkenny weren't firing, they brought on a couple of lads trying to get the thing going. It wasn't going their way. Joe Canning got to go in the first half, but he really just picked them up. It was like he just picked the team up by the scruff of the neck and says, right, lads, come on, I'll bring you to either win this game or bring us to a replay, whatever it was. And he was just unreal. He just came out centre forward, one puck outs, one hard ball, worked his arse off. I think he only got, I have marked down here, I think he only got a point from play. He scored 12 points overall in that game, but it was just his sheer leadership in that second half that I actually left that game thinking that was one of the first times I really seen a player show that leadership really stood out in the pitch on his own and just picked the team up by the scruff of the neck. And as the game finished up, dragged them to a replay and they won the replay. But that really just, to me, emphasised, I suppose, Henry Sheffield's leadership, I suppose his influence in the game and his influence in the team and the squad. So that's the reason I picked that one. That was the reason I left Croke Park that day thinking that was unbelievable second half performance for Henry Sheffield. And, he's been there since 99 and it's 2012, and to produce that performance at that stage of his career, I just thought it's outstanding.
And when you talked about the quality of team he was in earlier, but for them to underperform almost collectively while he was capable of doing that and making sure that they didn't go out of the championship that day, I think anybody who's there will remember that forever, because that's kind of a signature performance from Henry. There were other great performances from Henry where he would score 2-8 and he'd destroy a team, and like that he'd pick on the weakest link of the opposition. But that day it was like everything was failing against an opposition who I think had already beaten him in the championship that year and who were on the verge maybe of becoming a great team, and they just said, oh, no, it's not going to happen. And it set Galway back years, I think, losing that one. Did they go on and have, is that when the management team ends up splitting from the players afterwards? So it sets in motion this kind of, it's one person saying not today, and it's also the greatest hurler of all time doing that. You're like, well, that's pretty impressive. So fair enough, I think that's definitely worthy of a place on the list.
Yeah, I said there, it was just one of the moments I left Croke Park and I was going, geez, that was an unbelievable performance to bring your team back from the dead, nearly single-handedly, and that's why it stood out in my mind. As I said, I don't even think he got man of the match that day. I think when the Galway, was it Irla Tanyan or someone got man of the match for Galway middle of the field that day, it just goes to show it. But for me as a player at the time, and looking back even now, when I was thinking back the other day about what performance I picked, he just, for some reason, that just keeps standing out in my mind. And I think his teammates and Kilkenny people would understand why I'm picking that performance.
Seamus Callanan in 2015 against Galway, poor Galway, second time in a row we've picked on them today. But this is the semi-final against Galway in 2015. They
won this major.
What about Callanan? Is this the 3-9 in defeat? Is that day, is it?
Yeah, it was. He scored 3-9, 3-4 from play.
That's not bad.
No, that was just, even I was playing myself centre back, and it was just, even you could, when it was happening in front of your eyes, you were just like, is that actually him again? That kind of way. Is he after getting another score? He was just on fire. That, we were speaking about Larry there earlier on about, when Eamon O'Shea came in, that Larry really, his career, his performance really changed in for years. Likewise, the Seamus Callanan there, especially from 2014 on, and when Eamon was manager 2014-15, that his game just changed. It went up a couple of notches, and this game kind of really was the explosion of that for all the world. We probably didn't hurl as best as we could have that day, but the game was a cracking game, really close. It was the start of a trilogy semi-finals 3 years in a row where we were separated between Tip and Galway by a point either way. They won in 15 by a point, we won in 16 by a point, and they won in 17 by a point. But that performance, in 2015, personally for Seamie, was just unbelievable. Even we lost by a point, you leave and you go, Jesus, what is after? That was unbelievable. 3-4 from play, 5 frees, I think Padraic Maher started on full back. They had to move him out. They put Dahi Burke in full back. You know, and they're not. I know they were unbelievable players and are still unbelievable players for Galway. And he was just making ribbons of everyone that came near him, like, you know. So it was just unbelievable. 3-4 from playing Ireland semi-final to be on the losing side, like, you know. It was just. I remember seeing him after the match that day, and we were all devastated. But he was just heartbroken because you'd think that'd get you over the line on any given day, but unfortunately it didn't.
He's a very different type of hurler to Lar Corbett, but I guess physically, I presume anyway, they're fairly similar. So which of the two was harder to mark in training, Corbett or Callanan?
Yeah, that's hard. They're kind of two different players to mark. Larry's kind of a more a roamer, a freestyle, where I suppose Shamey really nailed down his spot as full forward from 2014 on, and never really moved too far from there. You know, both probably the same height, both probably the same strength. And I'd love to watch the race between the two of them, see who'd win it, because over 100 metres, because two of them are like lightning. You know, but yeah, very hard to mark. I suppose Larry's going to be that bit better in the air than Shamey was, but Shamey improved that as the years went on. I actually think that day in the 3-4 from play, I think he actually caught 2 balls out of the sky to score him. So that's after defeating my reason there, who was better in the air. But yeah, in general, no, Larry probably had the edge in the air. But yeah, Shamey was just, you know, I often marked him over the years in training. I was full back, he was full forward. He's so quick off the mark, 5-6 yards, burst left or right, like he's gone. And he used to like to play a lot from behind. He'd like to come in behind you and make a run behind you. You know, play the defender from behind. So it's very hard to see what way he was going to go. Whereas Larry might make a move out in front of you. So, but yeah, you know, very difficult to mark. I would have marked him a few years over in club games as well. But geez, yeah, that day he was just unstoppable. Like, and there was another performance in 2016, the final against Kilkenny. He scored 13 points and 9 from play. I could have very easily put that in, but I said, if I will, they'll all be given out. I picked just tip ones.
That semi-final, right? As you say, it's the trilogy of years. Galway didn't really do themselves justice in the final against Kilkenny. The following years, you point out, you actually annihilate Kilkenny in the final, and that's Michael Ryan's first year. So this is Eamon O'Shea's last game as manager. I was always really disappointed that we didn't get to see that final that year, because it felt like yourselves and Kilkenny were the best teams in the country. You can't say that after you lose a semi-final. I suppose it's not fair, but of all the defeats that stick out, does that one still rankle the most?
Yeah, it's a bit of an itch, all right. We'll say, I think Tip had this succession plan in place that it was going to be Eamon's last year anyway, and Mick Ryan was going to take over. It was one of the first times he's done it, but like, Eamon was such a big part of all our careers, that group. You know, he got us going in 2009. You know, he came back in 2013 to take over as manager for them few years. And like, you do anything for the man, you know, you literally die with your boots on for the man. And that was one of our biggest hopes, I suppose, is to try and win All Ireland for him. And especially being his last year and against Galway, he's living up in Galway, he's working in Galway. We know what it meant to him to win that game. So yeah, it was devastating in that point of view. And I suppose I said to you to start, just felt we didn't play as good as we could have that day. I felt Galway gave it everything, and that got them over the line. I just felt that we left a few probably notches of a performance behind us, and only for Shamey's outstanding individual performance, you know, we could have been further away. But yeah, very disappointing. As I said, we drew Kilkenny the year before in Ireland, beating in the replay, so it'd be nice to get back to 2015 to play him again, but just unfortunately weren't good enough at the time and the day.
Last one here is Gerard Hegarty against Kilkenny in this year's All-Ireland final. It's definitely one of the all-time great All-Ireland final performances.
Yeah, definitely. You know, I was over the game. You know, just like, it's very easy to look back now when the final whistle is gone, but even we were talking about at the game afterwards, that the way it finished up and the way Kilkenny fought back, and, you know, as Kilkenny do, they never give up. They're always hanging in there. Didn't play that well, but like, if you take Gerard Hegarty's performance out of that game, we don't know what way it would have went in the finish. You know, so he really dictated that day, you know, throughout the game. You know, he scored 1-5, but he was winning puck outs. You know, he was getting on breaking ball. There was no one, like they moved Paddy Deegan onto him, they switched more lads onto him. They just wanted him to get a grip of him. And it was just one of them days that I know myself as a player, and he'd probably say the same thing, Grode. He was just playing, it was just freedom. The ball was following him around the field. It was just one of them days that everything was working out for you. And it was one of the best performances I've ever seen live anyway, without a doubt. It's just, you know, if as I said to you, if you take his performance out that day, Kilkenny could have snuck a victory, like, you know, but he just kept Limerick going. Even when Kilkenny started coming back into the second half, he got on outrageous scores from off out the field. He was winning frees, he was winning puck outs. You know, he was getting the frees that he was getting through, and he was getting advantage and just taking the frees. So to me, it was just, we were saying at the time, we were laughing, we're saying, geez, why don't Kilkenny just put someone on him and man mark him and skip to follow him everywhere to go? But they tried it and it just didn't work. Like, and in fairness, they brought on the big tall fella, David Blanchfield, wing back. I think he got a point, and he caught a ball over to Gerard Hegarty as well in the second half near the end. But Gerard answered back, I think, with a long range point or something to get him over the line. Or, like, you know, it was just outrageous performance, and it was one of the best I've ever seen live in the flesh anyway.
No, it was absolute genius for sure. One last thing, you're involved with Liam Cahill. That must be pretty exciting, because you know intimately how good the group of players are at the moment, and also we're just talking about Gerard Hegarty there, so you know what the challenge is like. How are you enjoying that?
Yeah, sure, obviously, it is very easy days yet. Like, everyone's smack bang in the middle of the club championship, so yeah, it is quite enough on our part at the moment, but I'm just delighted to be asked to be involved again. I suppose, you know, I'm only gone over, you could say, a season, so not everybody gets the opportunity to come back in as soon. And, you know, I really missed it, being involved with a group, and missed it, I suppose, being involved in a high performance setup and that competitive, you know, setup. So yeah, I'm thrilled to be back, and privileged and honoured to be asked by Liam, and hopefully I can offer something back to the group and the management team, and yeah, see, can we get the show back on the road again next year.
And do you know what your role will be yet? Have you got into the nitty gritty of that? I suppose it's difficult when there's no training sessions or even conversations to be had with lads.
Yeah, I'm just part of the management team, selector, and helping out whatever way I can, helping out the coaches, Mikey Beavens and that. So yeah, looking forward to now. It's going to be a great challenge. Yeah, obviously it's different for me, but already you're thinking of different things. So yeah, it's a great challenge, and one I'm looking forward to, and yeah, get the club championship out of the way then, and get the ball rolling.
Well, listen, we wish you the very best of luck with it, Paudie. Thanks a million for joining us. Cheers.
Cheers, lads. Thanks.
It's Tip legend Paudie Maher giving us his 5 selections for You Had to Be There, and we'll obviously do that again next week.